Shama, and also his dear friend Adam Kahane, who's visiting us from North America. And I'm also so happy that Anne Stadler is here because Anne and I met thanks to Mahesh. This was a conference which was done for the first time in India called The Business of Business is Learning. It was the first time open space was used in India, and Harrison Owen and Roger Harrison, Jagdish Parikh, Prasad Kaipa, and a lot of other friends of ours, we all got together for 3 days. And Mahesh had this wonderful quality of opening his heart to everybody. He not only was somebody who welcomed everybody with his full heart, but he made all of us feel so comfortable and so full of that higher purpose within each one of us, which was calling us to create a sense of community. That over those 3 days we formed lifelong friendships, and Anne has become an inseparable part of our lives ever since. And this was thanks to the quality of hosting that Mahesh did. I think the art of hosting is very special, and the way you do it with your full heart. And I must tell you another personal story. In the year of 1974, when I was a young aspirant for summer internship in Tata Motors, I was in a new MBA program in University of Pune, and I wasn't sure where I would intern. So our whole class went for interviews. 40 of us went to Tata Motors, those days called Telco. And there was this young person, just a few years older than I, with his beard and very bright eyes. And he asked me some very tough questions in the internship interview. But for some reason, he chose only one student from the MBA class, and that was I, who was chosen to do the internship. And the day I landed up for my internship, I found my guide was nowhere to be seen because Mr. Mukhopadhyay decided to go on long leave. And Mahesh met me in the canteen, and he said, I say, that's a typical way he would speak. I said, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm looking for my guide. He said, whatever has happened to your guide? I said, he was supposed to be here, but he seems to have gone on leave. So he said, well, come and see me this afternoon. So I sat down, and then he guided me through the rest of my internship. And at the end of my internship, he said, now you have to go and meet Mr. Arun Maira, who was his supervisor and who was this young, early 30s, senior deputy general manager, whatever that title meant. He was the person next to Mr. Jakarta running the Pune operations. And he asked me some very wonderful questions. And one question he asked me was, what is the purpose of your life? And as I was telling him just now and telling Adam, that whatever I said that day has turned out to be true. Now this was exceptional qualities. Here was Arun with his very understated, soft way of asking questions. And there was this Mahesh with a twinkle in his eyes and saying, I say, what are you taking responsibility for? I will never forget Mahesh admonishing me when I once entered into his room. He said, Anil, I know you have a very sharp memory. I know you remember everything I tell you, but next time you enter my office without a writing pad and pen, and next time I see you not taking notes of our conversations, you have had it. You are not going to ever do that again. The second thing he said to me is that, the best way for learning is give a person 14 hours work to do in 6 hours. That's the best way for a person to develop. And then he would give us examples and stories. And it was so wonderful to be with Mahesh because he did something very unique. Once a month we would get together with our spouses, and Neera, my wife, is here, and him, and all our friends, and we would all read by turn a new book. And we would hold a potluck dinner. And we would tell each other stories about the book, and of course we would bond and we would sing together, and we would, do all kinds of wonderful things to form a sense of community. Those lessons that we got at that time as young people starting our lives were very special. I think the way we worked, I remember one time when the Pune plant was being set up, all our graduate engineer friends used to sleep maybe 1 or 2 hours at night because a crucial line was being created. And I don't know what happened to me, but I was also working non-stop. I was with my engineering colleagues. And for 7 days, I think we hardly ever slept. I don't think I remember any time in my life that ever such a thing has ever happened. But that aspect, and then finally, of course, when I graduated from my MBA program and I was about to join some company, Mahesh met me with him in this restaurant, the Vaishali in Ferguson College, opposite Ferguson College. I was dating Neera, my wife, and we were sitting there early morning having the world's best dosa. And then I said, what are you doing here? Because he walked in. I said, I'm supposed to join this in this company. He said, are you going to spend the rest of your life selling soap? Or are you going to help me to build the world's best auto company? Just the way he said it. I said, but I thought Tata Motors is no longer hiring MBA students. He said, no, you are going to come and meet me tomorrow. And I went to meet him. And he straight away said to me, now go for your medical test. And my life went into a new trajectory. And I can't thank him, you and Mahesh enough for showing the path and for helping me to be who I am. So I have a deep sense of gratitude to you for what you did to me and my wife and to my family. But my father became a great friend of him and Mahesh because he used to hold these study group classes on the Indian scriptures. And they would go and attend classes even after I was gone from Pune and I had joined Aisha in Delhi. So my whole family, my younger brother, everybody had this wonderful, they felt this deep love for Mahesh and him and the family of somebody who stood for excellence, who really invoked the spirit of ancient India and its wisdom traditions on one side and its fierce commitment to excellence and total belief and trust in the potential of young people. So I can go on talking about what those times meant to us, but I think there are others here who may want to share their relationship with Mahesh. So before Arun, I request him to speak. May I request the others in this room who have known Mahesh and have been with him to say whatever they are moved to share, and maybe the first person I will request is Dan.
In some ways, I really feel intimidated to share because I feel that Mahesh was really larger than life in my life, as well as he was a dear, dear spur in the same way as you describe, Anil. There was always a sense for me of learning, always learning, and delightedly learning with Mahesh. Anil was just in Seattle and gave a public talk about compassion a few months ago. And at the time, we had just heard that Mahesh was ill, very seriously ill. So Roger Harrison, who was also a dear friend and with whom I met in Goa, and Anil and I invited the whole circle of people who did not know V.S. Mahesh, but who were there for the same kinds of values and contribution to the life of the community and the life of the planet that he stood for. We sat in silence to honor him and to honor what he had meant in our lives. And in some ways, it's very sad for me to be here without him here, because I had hoped to visit him in Chennai when I came. But I cannot say enough about the deep sense of purpose and welcome that he communicated. For me, a person who was just truly stepping into what my self-realization, my path of self-realization was at that time. So this picture of him up here with the gleam in his eye and the smile on his face just pulls at my heart. And I want you to know he had the whole enchilada in terms of his ability to be with you and with others and to inspire us. Who else would like to speak? Shailendra ji? Maybe? I don't know.
Mahesh was a very senior person, and I met him first time at the National HRD Network Conference in Chennai. And I heard him speak. I was with Professor T.V. Rao. T.V. and I were sitting, and that's how I got introduced. And the interaction was very brief, but the way he spoke and mesmerized the audience with his deep insights. I was also new to HR those days. I had come from operations. Then there was a long gap, and I heard the stories only from Anil and in the open space workshops, including the one where Anne was in Anand and so on. Later, and this is a very, very personal event for me, because the last I met him was, I was having lunch in Anil's room, because that day no one from faculty was available. So we ended up talking, and he said that he is working on a research project to develop case studies and other material of Indian leaders. And when he heard about the fact that I had worked with Dr. Puri, he was very keen, and I promised him that I will put him in touch with people who knew and worked. He says that it's not just anecdotal, but also some research. His idea was that every time we quote a leader, we quote mostly from the Western world, but some from the Indian ethos. Alas, that project didn't happen because God took him away from us. But the thought remains, and we did a little work on the 14th of January with another friend, and hopefully something will come out on that. So, thank you.
Would somebody else be moved to share? Any one of the students in his class wishes to say something? Yes. Go ahead. Kevin.
Good evening, everyone. I'm from Business Leadership Program. We were fortunate to have a session by B.S. Mahesh on the marketing of services. Every topic he covered, it was pretty more examples than the topic which we had actually. So each of the topic we say, we had a couple of examples. So probably when we are getting into the next set of the chapters or whatever it is, which is taken up in the next course. So we remember these examples. So on the other day when the lecture was happening, people were able to recall the examples rather than just directly the concepts. So probably that was how he etched in us with concepts basically. So that was one of the wonderful concepts, how he delivered the course with us. And today while I was going through one of his article, which he says, is the Porter's last course still valid? So when we had seen the demise of the Monitor Group, we was questioning whether the company which Michael Porter has formed, is everything which is valid in the manufacturing industry, why is it being just bluntly taken in the services industry? So rather than just consultants being making money, we should focus on what exactly is valid for other companies. So probably his articles also bluntly say the truth, And I think he was one of the wonderful thinkers. And I certainly thank sir for coming over here and delivering a wonderful lecture. Thank you.
So whenever we see Professor V.S. Mahesh sir's photo here, I think you all will imagine this gentleman sitting here on the chair and controlling 113, 114 students, and still, as Anil sir rightly said, that twinkle in his eyes, he used to easily point out some student at the back also, and his ability to connect to all the students sitting here was really amazing. And KVK rightly mentioned, still now, when we have something related to services, we try to recollect what he had taught and the experiences. For example, when we travel by flight, and something at the back of the mind immediately comes, oh, sir had taught us this, so we start looking at in different dimensions, and we truly miss him. And when you had a session in Seattle, I still recall, we also were in a morning circle, and we also had prayed for him. But anyway, that is how the things go, and we truly miss him, and God bless his soul where he is right now.
Friends, this is Srinivas. First thing, I still regret missing his last lecture at Soil because of various other reasons where I had to go. I still regret the fact that I didn't attend his last lecture. He was certainly one of the best professors here at Soil. He was actually handling 120 students together, all three cohorts together in this very room. And he was quite effective in doing that, in spite of the fact that he was sitting, not even moving and addressing the gathering. Some of the times he used to sit and handle the lecture, but still he was able to control the entire set of students, and he had the attention of most of us. And also apart from that, listening to him speak reminds me of, it reminds me of Richie Benoit, the Australian leg spinner and commentator. And I also went ahead and told him that when I was traveling with him on the escalator, I went ahead and told him that you remind me of, your presentation reminds me of Richie Benoit, and he told me it was a huge compliment because he was a huge fan of Richie Benoit. And he himself was a cricketer, I guess, probably the old classic Mylapore style cricketer for people who know Chennai. Mylapore is what Bombay means to Indian cricket. Mylapore is like that to Chennai cricket. So probably he should be of that style. And overall, he was a great person. He was a great person as well as a great faculty at Soil.
Mr. Arun Maira, member of the Planning Commission, former director of Tata's, partner of Arthur D. Little, CEO of Innovation Associates, and chairman of Boston Consulting Group for India, and above all, somebody who was a dear friend of Mahesh and a mentor to Mahesh, and a friend of Soil. May I request Arun to please share his message and whatever he is moved to share with us.
Today about a person who's very special to you, obviously, but I realized he's very special, has been very special in my life, and thank you, Anil, for inviting me, giving me a chance to say a few words. Mahesh and I realized when you said that he would like me to say a few words, he and I were on a journey together. As a very young person, and I'll talk about it. We learned a lot about ourselves, each other, and about the human spirit. And I want my stories about our discovery of our spirit and the human spirit. And then, since we were in the profession like you are of, as you say, human resource and leadership development, of how one can help others to discover their spirit of leadership, their spirit of caring, and of enabling good things to happen. I was not yet 30, Tata Administrative Services, and Telco, now known as Tata Motors. The architect of that company, Sonal Pulgankar, was chairman of the company. He needed a young runaround, I suppose. So he had engaged me as his executive assistant to sit in every meeting that he had with senior people. So I could listen and learn what the big issues of management are and how plans are made and executed. We were at that time, in the late 60s, conceiving and beginning to build a new facility built entirely by Indians to produce products designed by Indians and make those products to show the world and to show us in India that we can also do it. We were coming out of the era where we still are not completely out of it, where we need others to tell us what to do in technology and industry, and there's a feeling that we're not there yet. So I'm talking that many years ago, where thinking ahead and saying we have to have first the spirit of learning, of doing what we don't know how to do, and then being able to do it as well as anyone in the world can, and then going beyond that also. That was the spirit of Sumit Mugaonkar. So he said we will build a plant on our own. We'll tell Daimler-Benz, with whom we had a long collaboration, that we don't wish to continue it. And we will learn how to do without your best technology and compete with you in the world also. Audacious. So we have to build our own plant, a fresh one, built only by Indians, no help from foreigners. So our engineers, the best of them, who'd been trained by Daimler-Benz for 20 years before that, 15 years before that, those 15 years, were all, okay, whatever you learned, now put it out. Design this plant, design the machinery, design the processes. Let's show ourselves and the world that we can do it. So the plans used to be produced before the chairman, big meetings, and he'd go visit the world's, India's best engineer, certainly, Sumit Mugaonkar, built plants in his life before. So he would look and go around and say, something is missing here. So everyone would retreat and look in again and say, maybe with this machine we made the aisle too narrow or too wide or the building too low. And they'd come back and request a meeting a week later and show them again. And again we look and say, that's better, but something is missing. So this went on about 4 or 5 such meetings till they sort of gave up. And he was doing it almost like a Zen master. I'm not giving you the answer, but I'm asking you the question, something is missing here. Then they said, please tell us what is missing. So he said, where are the people? You think these machines are going to run by themselves? You think the processes are going to work just because there's a switch somewhere? I mean, there are going to be people. Where are the people in this place? Without people, you cannot firstly build this plant, and there's no question thereafter of running it either. So where are the people? They said, people. Now, they never thought about people. It's engineers and saying, we get the thing right, it'll work. So he said, well, not to waste any more time, one of you is going to have to take charge of the people side of this enterprise, the building of the people side of this enterprise. And since all of you couldn't even think about it, and you are maybe so immersed in the technology and the finance and the engineering, this young chap is going to do it. So I said, me? I know nothing about it. He said, that's good, you're going to learn about it and do it at the same time. So I to just take it, and I asked him at the end of the meeting, I said, but with whom and how will I do this? He said, we'll give you some help. The next day I was told that I was given some help. There was a new TS officer called V.S. Mahesh, who joined the Tata Administrative Service. And by the way, to sell him to me, he said, you've done physics, he's also done physics. He said, you make a good team together. So here I am, feeling completely a novice, and I've got this other novice with me. And the two of us sit down and say, gosh, what's all this about, right? But we got into that journey, and it was such a wonderful journey, what we learned there. I recollect, yes, it has to be about people. It will have to be about, we realized very quickly, about young people, innocent people like we were. Because as we advertised, the first thing was you advertise for the best and say, Tata is building this world-class plant. Surely you would get seasoned, experienced people from other organizations wanting to join us. But we realized, and we got hundreds of applications, that indeed there are very few people that time in India who had the knowledge and experience. We were ahead of the others, so where are the people going to come from? And whoever wanted to come from abroad to return to India those days in the 60s, there was something wrong. I mean, they sort of given up, they were a failure, and they thought that since I've been abroad, Indians will love to have me. And our proud Indians, interviewing them, said, we certainly will not have them. Look what we are doing here, why should we have this person here? So we got a zero out of it. So we have to find fresh young people, so we said, let's go to the engineering colleges, the management schools which had just opened at the time, and let's hire people. It was a time when levers could tempt anybody, yes. They sold soap perhaps, but they paid good money and you had nice air-conditioned offices in which to work. And then Citibank was there with even fancier air-conditioned offices and foreign training and so on. So we were competing with such organizations. We wanted the best. And I was told this story, and Mahesh and I were the young guys, hardly older than the people that we were recruiting, for going and telling them, well, here's something which could be your future. I was told a few years ago, just 4 or 5 years ago, by a retired head of the Indian Institute of Management in Ahmedabad, about when myself and Mahesh were at these schools. He said, the year we came to the Institute in Ahmedabad, we finished, Mahesh and myself saying, well, this is what the Tata Enterprise is going to be about, come join. Finished, sat on the stairs outside, the student said, but you didn't tell us something important. I said, what's that? What's the salary we're going to get? So I said, very low. I'll tell you what this is. Oh, but that's 1/3 of what the Citibank pays and half of what Levers pays. That's the salary, and so on. What work will we do and where will we work? We said on the factory floor. You build it and then you work on the factory floor. It's dirty, noisy. That's what it will be. The questions they asked and we answered, very candidly saying we have no money to offer you and no comfort and no formal training to give you either. It's just a challenge. As the director of IIM Ahmedabad said to me, the retired director, that every one of the persons we offered a job to, and we offered from the top to the first 5, all accepted our offer and turned down the offers of the other companies. So there is spirit in people, in young people then was, and I hope there it is in young people today. What do we work for? What's our lives about? So that's something we had gotten ourselves, Mahesh and myself, and then we learned that there are people in this country, in the world, that they have that spirit and they want a chance to nurture their own spirit, to work with others and to create something which has not been created so far. We were having to manage costs very hard. The company was building something on its own, investing in buildings, of course, and land and machines, but busily investing in people who would then learn how to design machines. So the gestation period of our investments was very long. We had to be very frugal with money. We couldn't afford to have the luxury of more people that we could pay, as it is we're paying so little. So our managers, who were the few skilled people, the senior people, who were given the responsibility to build a foundry from scratch, to build a research center from scratch, to build a machine shop from scratch, were looking for, again, resources, right? So what resources do you give them? So just like Mr. Mulgaonkar gave me Mahesh as my partner, we had to tell these people, well, these young guys are the only resource you have. And they would say, you're joking or something? How do you expect me to get something done with these young guys? So I said, that's all there is. That's all there is. And with that, a good partnerships developed, that the young people had to be the people who were given the chance to do something, not to be taught something, but just do something, because there's no time to teach you. You just have to do it. And so, as Anil was reminding me, just one story, like the foundry. We built the world's first foundry built in a developing country, all equipment designed and built in India, but there was no foreign exchange to buy equipment or even pay for the technology. We first tried with retired German engineers who we hired on an individual basis, and couldn't run. 3 years passed till this young crowd was thrown at it. This Chief Mr. Barbadeker. And within 3 or 4 years of struggle, yes, they slept 2 hours at night, but they had the world's best foundry built in a developing country. And as the Germans then said, it was equal and better than the standards of their foundries, foundry in Pune. So young people and the spirit, and we learned this could be so. The program that emerged of development of young people, of these young engineers, was one of assignments at work. And in each assignment, they worked but they were required to reflect at the end of the assignment about what they had learned in the assignment. So do and learn while you're doing and reflect on your learning, you get the insight. That was the additional thing that they were required to do, which a regular manager wasn't required to do. India then, and like India now, has a graduate apprentice scheme, which is a government scheme. You're required to do certain things in a certain way and submit reports about what you have done. Our scheme in Pune was exempted from complying with government requirements. But as the director of training said, this scheme is so far ahead of the scheme that government is imposing on others, we daren't tell you what to do. Lead on and to do it. Now in that program, I remember another incident. One engineer, graduate engineer, Palekar, he was a gold medalist in metallurgy. It so happened that one of the assignments that he had to get at the time, there didn't seem to be any, piece of work that needed to be done that he could be part of. So he was assigned to the stores, stores where you issue things and receive things. We had running our stores, and you remember Brigadier Modi was the head of materials, and there was a Colonel Solomon who was number 2, and there was a captain someone else. It was run by the army, our stores. So this young fellow, Palekar, was posted and given to these army guys who say, well, he's a graduate engineer. They said, well, what can you do with a young engineer? You need years of experience to run a store. So, well, he's there. So they gave him a table and said, just sit over there and don't cause any problems here, just observe. Palekar wrote an assignment at the end of his 3 months in the stores, which I still recollect, so must have been one of the best done by any of our graduate engineers, where because he was asked to just observe and not do anything, observed who the store personnel respected and his hypotheses of why they respected those people. And he said the sources of authority are not position. The sources of authority are something else. And it was he's a metallurgist, but he wrote one of the best essays on leadership and relationships amongst people. So, lesson from me then and Mahesh was be curious all the time. It doesn't matter if you're given something dull to do. Don't say, oh, I want something more exciting. Everything can be exciting. Just be curious. Say, what's going on here? Do your hypothesis like Palekar was doing and testing it. If this is so, then that should happen. And he got 3 months to observe. It didn't happen. Well, try another one. And then he's got a proven social experiment that he's done there. We, Mahesh and myself, then were working on changing the structures of human resource management. Regarding our blue-collar workers, then and even now, are treated like extensions of machines. Get their hands and make them work and don't be a nuisance. Pay them as little as you can get away with. We said, no, it's the human spirit. The blue-collar workers, just like our graduate engineers, want to learn and make something of themselves. Perhaps even more, because they haven't had the opportunities that our engineers have had. So it must be they're human beings, a greater spirit. What can we do about changing the structures of our human resource management, that we nurture the spirit and reward building of capabilities by people themselves? So we changed, or proposed to change, the payment system and said there will not be a limitation of the number of positions and grades. You don't have to wait for a vacancy. There will not be a limitation on the number of people who can get increments. I mean, you have proven, and I explained how, that you have developed a higher level of capability or a different capability, and you're tested and you have it. You'll be paid higher money whether we need you to do that work or not. We will reward capability building and enable people to build their capabilities. So we had a scheme that we devised called the Skill Versatility Matrix Scheme. Of course, you can imagine, and even today people will say, crazy idea. How would you manage your costs if you're going to allow people to improve themselves and pay them just for having improved themselves? So we had fast forwarded and said a company which has more capabilities than others and a greater variety of capabilities than others is a resource which the management can then use to do new things. So it's then a test of the management that if I've got these capabilities, what's my strategy to do new things and do them? And so people will learn from the new innovations that you produce and make and succeed with. We took this scheme, of course, before we were allowed to implement it, to the unions, and they debated and they liked it. We took it to our managers, they were very fearful of it. We said, let's get some experts. That year, that we were to finally roll out the scheme. In Delhi, there was the World's Conference on Human Resource Management, which ILO was conducting with our government. And the lead speaker there was a person called Tom Lupton. He was the world's authority at that time on industrial relations. Written a book called Peace Work Abandoned. So Mahesh and I flew into Delhi, got Mr. Mugabe's permission. He was great to support these things. And said, can we go? He said, of course. Told the Delhi office, make sure that these two guys get a chance wherever. So we got an evening with Tom Lupton and said, well, this is our scheme. And Tom Lupton said, my goodness, I've never seen such a well thought through strategy for building human capabilities, using the spirit of people to build their capabilities and things around that we provided them with. So we had the endorsement, and Mulgaonkar just wanted that, and he couldn't care whether the managers liked it or not. Is this a good idea? Endorsed by someone who knows the subject. We went back to him and said, this is what Tom Lupton said. He said, you shall do it, I'm with you. So we introduced the scheme and was there for many, many years in Pune. And while it was there, it was a time in the early 1980s when the liberalization of India started. And it started with the automotive industry, where the truck producers, yourselves and Aisha, your partners and 3 other companies, 4 companies, were permitted to partner with Japanese companies, bring technology, parts from Japan, and sell light trucks here. And we said, but we Tatas, why don't you give us a chance? We've got this capability we built to also produce and sell light trucks. No, there's a licensing system. You cannot produce a truck which is less than 8 tons in weight. These trucks are all 6 tons and less. We are paying money to others, foreign money which is very scarce. Just give us a chance to do it. It took a year and a half for those discussions with government. Finally they said, okay, but meanwhile we've allocated all the foreign exchange to Eicher, DCM, Hindustan Alvin, and I forget the 4th one. Swaraj was there, I guess. Yeah, all of them. So for that industry, this is the foreign exchange over. You can produce a lighter truck if you so wish, but you shall design it yourself, you will produce it yourself, machines yourself, everything yourself. Meanwhile, our salespeople are saying, look, the story is over. These people are already in the market signing up our dealers. If we don't within less than 2 years, and they said 18 months, design from scratch, prototype, produce, build the machines, and have a truck with our dealers, in 18 months, the story of Tata's is over, of Telco is over. For good strategic reasons. Well, that's when the crowd got together. And since people had the versatility and higher skills than they were required to use at that time, here was an opportunity to draw in such a mass of energy, skilled energy, that we within 18 months had the 407 out everywhere, and the rest is history, as they say. I think other than yourselves, the rest just sort of collapsed. And that turned around the fortunes of the company. Tata's went then further lighter and so on. So this is Mahesh and myself. Till the end, there were 3 only in the division. There was him, Mahesh, myself, and then Mr. Banaji. It was a very young crowd of people because the work had to be done by others. We made that a rule that we will not have a big management training division, because then people will send people for management training and forget that the training is done together, in the work together, by asking each other, what's the new thing that we need to learn? How do we learn it? What have you learned? What can I learn from it? Questions about learning as one is working is the strategy. Now I come on to going further. Times pass. JRD Tata notices that there's some spirit in Telco, which, they're doing these fantastic things, and what about the other companies? So Mahesh and I were asked to conduct a meeting of the heads of human resources in all the Tata companies. I, by that time, was maybe 8 or 9 years older than that, so maybe 35. Mahesh might have been in his early 30s. So we got people who, in their 50s and in HR. So in the Tata Management Training Center, the 2 of us rather humbly, me a little more humbly, Mahesh can be, as people are saying, quite firm sometimes, even though he was young. So we had a very good meeting in which we made ourselves explore the principles of human resource management. Today, I find that human resource management is becoming too much a techniques, the set of best recruitment techniques, the interview techniques, the whatever techniques and so on. It's not what's the principles of the human spirit by which the human spirit is built and uses itself to build capabilities that it then enjoys. I want to read a few things about those times, and this, I'm going to read first something out of this is Mr. Mulgaonkar, who was our chairman, and I picked it up him today when I said, what will I say? And all these thoughts were coming back, so I went inside my room, struggled underneath, and I found this thing. It had a letter from K.G. Rao to me saying, I was in America at the time already when Mr. Mulgaonkar passed away, and said, I want to send this to you as a memento. And I went through, and at the back of it, I recollected it, was the acceptance speech by S. Mulgaonkar on the occasion of the presentation of the Sir Jahangir Gandhi Medal for Industrial Peace. Mr. Mulgaonkar, in the late 1980s, when he was almost 80 himself, was awarded this medal, the Sir Jahangir Medal for Gandhi Medal for Industrial Peace. And he was a man of very few words anyway, if you recollect. And at that age, he didn't want to make the effort of having to make any speech. But everyone said, sir, anyone deserves it in the country, you do. Please, you have to. So, Sumant Mulgaonkar, was no longer working directly with him, but he called me, and so touching also. He said, Maira, I've been asked to accept this medal and to give a speech. You know I don't like to give a speech. I'm going to ask you to write me my speech. So I said, how can I write your acceptance speech? I mean, your experience. He said, no, you write it, because then I'll check to see whether you learned anything about the subject, like a test. So I did write the speech, and naturally I was curious whether he felt I had learned rightly and enough. And he said to me, it was so good that I have not changed a word of it. So I can proudly read his speech to you. This is his speech, and these are the words that I learned from him. And here are just some parts of it. It's not a short, not a long speech anyway. He said, we can build upon the strengths of the many people we have the good fortune to work with. There is in each man, and in those days one never mentioned women, but there's in each person something special which he would find satisfying to use and show his worth to his organization and community. The strengths in some are not hard to find, for they are evident, but in others they are suppressed. All sorts of forces within the organization, and sometimes within the man himself, often submerge these strengths of individuals. To bring them out and to feed them with exciting tasks must be our endeavor. A little later, the key to bringing out the best from men and women is to expect the best from them. Our people do respond to this demand for the best and set standards which people seem to somehow find surprising in India. There is this belief, even among the leaders of men in our country, that our culture and our Indian character cannot allow our people to attain consistent high standards, that shoddiness and carelessness are our God-given, unalterable way of life. But if, with faith in them, you ask our men for the best, they rise to your belief in their worth and create a momentum towards improvement that results in high standards in many things they do. Often have I seen the men who are considered ordinary rise to extraordinary heights. Do not accept second-rate work. Expect the best, ask for it, pursue it relentlessly, and you will get it. We, as a country, are always struggling with ourselves. We like to be admired. We resent it when people say that we are not good enough, and we very defensively want to say to them that they don't know, don't understand us. We really are very good, but amongst ourselves we keep saying things are not working around here. V.S. Naipaul, Nobel Prize winner for literature, been an acidic critic of India all his life. His origins are from India, his family from India too. He wrote, well, the first book was India, an Area of Darkness. And the second one India, a Lunar Civilization, which he wrote in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. In this book, which like his first book, is full of criticism of everything wrong about India, its culture, and us as people, even though he was an Indian, I suppose. There's just one passage in this book, which is about his visit to Telco in Pune. At the time, Mahesh and I, and then Visti had just joined us. Visti was a student of literature. Mahesh and I were physics. So he was so excited, young Visti, to say, V.S. Naipaul is visiting us. So I said, the gift to you is that you will take Mr. Naipaul around the factory and show him around. So V.S. Naipaul, that one afternoon or one day that he spent with us, and he went back, and then he wrote this book. As I said, there's just one passage in it, which is Any Hope for India. And he says here, the plateau around Pune is now in parts like a new country, a new continent. It provides uncluttered space. And space is what the factory builders and the machine makers say they need. They say they are building for the 21st century. Their confidence in the general doubt is staggering. But it is so in India. The doers are always enthusiastic. And industrial India is a world away from the India of bureaucrats and journalists and theoreticians. The men who make and use machines and the Indian Industrial Revolution is increasingly Indian. More and more of the machines are made in India, glory in their new skills. Industry in India is not what industry is said to be in other parts of the world. It has its horrors, but it does not, in the context of India, dehumanize. An industrial job in India is more than just a job. Men handling new machines, exercising technical skills that to them are new, can also discover themselves as men, as individuals. So here's, I read to you what Mr. Mulgaonkar said, the spirit has to be. And here's a journalist with a very sharp eye and a very sharp tongue too, who noticed that. So even if you say around us, this is general India, and so you can create something which makes you, if you are part of it, feel that we can do it too. We can do it too. And that confidence in yourself, which you noticed in Mahesh, I'm sure, is what it's about. It's what it's about. And you and it, it's what it's about. So with this, let me just conclude with the last words from Mr. Mulgaonkar's acceptance speech. He says, there is so much to be frustrated about in our country. A list of our frustrations would be endless. Everyone complains about someone or something not working the way it should. In this vast ocean of seeming incompetence, there is a small bit you are responsible for. Make sure that no one can accuse you of the same sloth and selfishness that you ascribe to everyone else. Make your own little bit of the country, be it one workbench or one office, a better place. Make an example of yourself to inspire others around you to do better. Change their frustration to motivation. Do your very best in whatever responsibility society gives you, no matter how small it is. And you will begin to make that change in culture that we all lament is necessary for our country to be a better place to work in. Enjoy your work, work hard, and give freely of yourself. Thank you so much.
We do have time for questions, so it would be very nice for any of you to ask a question. Please identify yourself, say who you are, which organization you're from, and what your question is. While some of you are still reflecting about what Arun just said, let me ask a question on my behalf and on behalf of my students. Arun, this was told to me by Mahesh within the first few weeks of my joining, that there will be many moments in our lives when we will get this feeling that we cannot do it because the circumstances outside will be so overpowering that you will see mediocrity all around and you you will find a lot of reasons to say this cannot be done. At that moment, you have to go deep within yourself and look for answers which will not come from others. No amount of reading or knowing is going to help you. So it was a very interesting conversation because, right around we had all kinds of issues in the other companies and lots of reasons, as you said, the government doesn't work, the politicians don't work, the emergency came, all kinds of funny things happened at that time. So I was wondering, now you are also in the government and there's a lot for us to crib about, the politicians are like that, the government doesn't function and all that. And yet some of us can choose to take responsibility, and which is what Mahesh said to us even at that time. I wonder if you would like to talk a little bit about that, because especially for the young people sitting in this room, that might be an interesting aspect to say, how do we empower ourselves despite all this negative energy that people talk about the state of our world and the state of our country.
Anil, you were mentioning downstairs the 4 floors or 5 floors of this building and the pillars, being a good person and creating a good world. And it's, as you said, mindfulness and this holiness, the reflection about, what was the word? It's a
subtle mind.
A subtle mind. It's what's on your mind at all times. Yeah? What are you focused on at all times? What are you searching for? In the search, there can be a frustration also. Yeah, so, what is the search, which is a creative search and will satisfy you regardless of whether you get the outcome or not, that you enjoyed the search itself? Creativity is such a search. And in my consulting work, after this, when I was a practicing manager in the consulting world in the USA with consultants, and that's how I got to know Adam very well. Got to this concept about creative tension, that there is a creative tension inside the creative persons and creative minds. And what is the source of that tension? It is the desire to create something, a sound or a piece of music or a picture or a piece of machine or some change in the life of someone else or yourself, but a creative, something which is not there. And that is what you're focused on, is this creation. And you are constantly, let me use the word struggle, struggling to improve what you are doing till you get there. There will be others who will say, it's enough. It's enough. Yeah? It's good enough. But you, if you really are the person who is searching for what you believe is excellence in your mind, will not stop there. You will carry on beyond it. So what is it that matters so much to you in your life? And it doesn't have to be music or art, it could be something else, in which you want to create a standard which perhaps only you would know. And I come back to a story which, again, is my days with Mahesh, and he must have told the story too, but it's a story I know, the driver called Lakshman that I was assigned, So Lakshman was assigned to me as a driver. When I came, because I was, TS guy and senior deputy general manager, big ambassador car, because that's the car we had, with this driver, and he was retiring in a few months' time, and here am I, a young guy then. So Lakshman, like a good driver, would stop and then try to get around and open the door for me so I could get out of the car and shut the door. That's the courteous thing for a good driver to do. And I was very awkward about this, because he was almost 16, I'm 30. Why should he have to do this? So I had to quickly jump out of the car and shut the door before he could get to it, and go over tank and puff and so on. Then after 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 such times, I said, Lakshman ji, I'm so much younger than you. You don't have to do it for me. So it is quiet, and then Lakshman said, he said in Hindi, he said, I don't mind what I'm going to say, he said. I'm not doing this for you, I'm doing it for the car. So I was a bit stumped, I'm a bit stumped, and he warned me that don't feel insulted, but a bit stumped. So I said, yes, what's that? He said, I'm going to break a record. What record? He said, my car is going to be, going to retire with my car having had the least maintenance cost of any car in this country, right? I said, but how do you know? Because he's a driver, he's supposed to come on time and take the car and, be courteous to the person he's carrying and leave the car. He said, when I leave the car back in the garage, there are all the records and the maintenance about, the various other cars that have been brought in, and mine too. And I'm watching, sir, the expenses of my car are so little compared to the others that, sir, I'm going to retire in a few months' time, and after that, no one can take the record. Yeah? But please, sir, you're young and you bang the door very hard. So this is, I said, even a driver, he's searching to make a standard which only he knows about. So what is it that you care for and will set a standard for yourself which you keep pursuing all your life? And that will keep you so satisfied that I'm learning and I'm creating something. And it's for what? It's for beauty, it's not for recognition, it's not for selling. It's just for an appreciation of yourself and the innate capabilities that you have.
Questions?
Yeah, my name is Sarthak Rai Chaudhary. I look after human resources for Whirlpool. Mr. Maira, you mentioned about, and we also heard a lot when all of you described Mr. Mahesh, about the spirit. And the various incidents that we heard is what was driving this individual at that point in time was that spirit. And he also mentioned that today we are, at least in human resources, we are moving away from that spirit into tools, techniques, measurement systems, and not focusing on things which cannot be measured, maybe should not be measured, or is difficult to measure. And that's, in essence, lies the dichotomy of where human resources or our dealing with another human being is getting changed. Why is this happening? And what can be done to bring back that spirit so that we treat each other as human beings and not as human resources?
Well, I'm going to connect again with the question that Anil asked, because I answered it with respect to individual search and becoming, but you'd asked about bureaucracy and what's going on. Yes, we've got a situation in the management of countries and the management of companies that we're talking about the creation of some value. In the company, we use the word, creation of value, we keep throwing it around. And it's about something that you measure in money terms, and that's the value, shareholder value, or whatever it is. And in the case of countries, we've got a bit stuck on measuring the GDP, is the development of the country. The proof of it is how large has it made its GDP. And many in the world now are beginning to question, on the companies, that is this whole emphasis on measuring money things, or things which can be measured in money, making us lose the connection with things which we at the moment don't know how to measure in money and perhaps should never measure in money. But they are part of the values that we should be always living by. And so also in countries, where the overemphasis on GDP, as people are saying, you're destroying the environment, you're destroying the quality of communities. What about those things? Now, an economist will say, but I don't know how to measure those things, and so I can't put them into my model. But that's no excuse. I and Mahesh learned physics. And physics, one thing we knew, that if there's something which is a force affecting that phenomena, you can't exclude it. You may not know at that moment how to put a measurable mathematical value on it, but it's part of the phenomena. And then you'll soon learn, some instrument which will help you to put some quantity onto it, but you can't ignore it now. Once that you know it, you can't ignore it. So we are in the world, in India too, we are coming to it a little late, but the whole world is coming to saying, what is the purpose of life? What is the measure of goodness that people would like to see in their community, in the planet, and in their lives? So gross national happiness and various green measures. So there is a search now, okay? But I again caution, it doesn't matter if you can't measure it. If it matters, it matters. And you have to then, live with it and take advantage of it. Caring for others is a good thing.
I'm Surya Prakash Nulkar from Capital Social Development Consultants. While I was hearing you, this is my gist of what you said is the drivers for the human spirit in your experience has been, at least in that era of 70s, 80s, and early 90s, where mainly pride and patriotism. Right? Machines created by Indians, designed by Indians. First time in India, so it's pride in doing the Indian thing, or the patriotism. In this era of which India has also entered in terms of materialism and money, how do we, what can be the drivers to rekindle the human spirit, which I understand, like I think you very well point out, is the core of a company, an organization, a country. Whichever way you want to measure it. So what can be the drivers in today's world for India with which we can rekindle the human spirit?
I think conversations like this are absolutely essential. It's a conversation amongst us, and I hope it then is a deeper conversation with yourself. You're reminding me of two modes of being in. I've got very senior people like Anne here and Arun Maira can explain further. But Eric Fromm, his classic work, To Have or To Be, points out that there are two modes of living, as it were. One is the having mode, that I measure my life by how much I have. And we're going around here and saying, this person has 3 SUVs or this and that. So they are living a good life, and they're successfully living a good life. But there's the being mode. And I was talking all the time about that being mode. The being mode. So as we begin to remind ourselves that there is something else which in fact gives us deeper satisfaction. And I would say that if we don't get back to that very soon, and I'm going to be not very mechanical, the amount of resource that the earth has to support this having mode is run out. This present model of consumption and companies also forcing you to consume more. That you got one cell phone but have another one for another time, or throw it away next year because I've got a better model and cars and all. So it's more material stuff that you're pulling out of the ground with energy. And companies are measuring their top lines. The amount of stuff that they have sold it to people. So it will change the paradigms of success of companies, as well as I say about society and about our own lives. It's not easy. It's not easy. And I was going to ask my friend Anil here, who I know very well, about the spirit that he has. And I see him mixing very comfortably with people who have enormous amounts of money. You recently were at a wedding, you follow him. Who there? Maybe they also are in the being mode in somehow. But what's the conversation and what's visible is all the having around there. Yeah? So what does one feel when one is in situations in which the measures of having are all wrong? And the conversations very much are about that too. So how does one, within this noise, nourish oneself, keep oneself nourished? It's a good spiritual question to ask. And the more people who begin to live their lives like that, and by just their being like that, infect others, if you use the word, with this happiness and this way of being, I think then we can change the measures of success and change the quality of the world also.
I think I'm moved to say something that on 8th of May 2000 we founded the Grow Talent Company Limited, and all the people we had served for many years in Aisha Consultancy got together to form this company by investing in the company. And 8th of May was the birthday of Swami Chinmayananda, the spiritual master whose life has inspired all of us. And the first board resolution that was passed was that out of all the money the consulting business makes, 10% of the gross profit, before we give bonuses to ourselves or before we invest in the company or before we use anything to give back to the shareholders, would go to serve the poorest of the poor. And I was asking myself, what did the board and all of us, why did we pass that as our very first board resolution of a new company? Which is the first charge of the business is to the community. And very interestingly, I searched back to my own life, and I remembered my father, an army officer, earning at that time 500 rupees a month, and 4 brothers and 2 sisters, raising 6 children, but every month taking out 10% of his salary, 50 rupees, to give to the poor. And sometimes my mother would say, you know, our daughter does not have a second dress to go to college. And my father would say, laughingly, at least she has a dress. You know, and I was tracking that to how much joy my father felt in sharing. And I see this. Yesterday we went to meet our worldwide spiritual head, Swami Tejuvananda. And this is something that will warm the hearts of every soil student and every soil consultant and the members sitting here. That last year we wanted to buy land for our new campus, and we had no money in the bank. We had accumulated losses in running our educational effort, and yet we were being inspired to buy the land. And then next thing I know, Mr. Tata called and said, you have to do this big project for the Tatas. And all the money came to buy the land, and we needed $1 million of cash, and it came and the land was purchased. But because we got that $1 million extra revenue, we made $1 million profit, because we managed with our resources. And so yesterday, on behalf of the school, when we went and presented our check for $100,000 for serving the poorest of the poor, I can't even tell you the joy that was experienced by Dr. Kshama Maitre, who runs the Chinmaya Organization of Rural Development. And she thanked every student of soil, every client of soil, every staff member of soil for the wonderful gifts that everybody was collectively giving back to society. And so I said, this right to get that joy is something which is very special. The joy of being considered as an instrument to serve is something very special. All the having can't do it. I think just to be of service is such a wonderful gift you get with yourself. And yesterday, and I also want to honor my students here. You know, some of them did some mischief a few days back. And they put up some Facebook page to talk about some funny stuff with each other, which I thought was not necessary. And then I called them and I spoke from my heart to the students and said, why are you doing this to yourself? And of course I could see them reflecting, and I'm so happy to share that all of them decided, and they have decided to, you took that page off Facebook in which they were discussing some gossip with each other. And the fact that you chose the goodness of yourself to honor that is something special, because you demonstrated that you cared for the whole. And I'm very proud of you. Not that you did wrong, but I'm very proud that you immediately took corrective action when one of the family members who had a right to love you unconditionally pointed out to you your responsibility for yourself. So I thank you, and I thank you for living in this way, that there will be many parts of our lives then we will make mistakes, but when we share and when we come together like a community, I think a lot can happen. So thank you. That's what I thought I should be. I want to ask, I know there are only 5 minutes left because Arun and Adam have to reach the India Center at 7 o'clock, so you need to leave in 5 minutes. But if I may ask you to say a little bit about whatever you are moved to share in response to this last question from your perspective, Adam. I know that you have been traveling the world, you are a friend of India, you are here for a special purpose this time. Anything that you would like to say on this occasion would be nice.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. I have been traveling the world, including this morning, so. Well, I would only say that this question about how to do this work, even when it seems so difficult, even when the exterior conditions seem so overwhelming, is something that I ask often. Because we're trying to make a contribution, and often it doesn't work as we hoped it would, or as we wanted it. Certainly, that's my experience. And Arun reminded me when I asked him that question of the famous chapter 2 quote of "the work is ours, but not the fruits thereof." And I really hold on to that idea that we must do what we can, do what we have the gift to be able to do what is in front of us, even though, and maybe even though often, it will not turn out the way we expect it to. And I was sitting here thinking what a pleasure it is to be at a school where these matters are taken seriously, as is the case in the remarks of this evening, and that it's possible to attend to these matters in a practical way. It doesn't have to be a very grand or mysterious or elevated discourse. But for me, the practical thing is, what is it that is needed of me and us in this context, and to do it, not knowing what results it will produce.
Thank you. We are very, very happy to share that we have started a scholarship in the name of V.S. Mahesh. And since this batch is already graduating and they were already given scholarships because they are graduating only in a few weeks from now, we could not announce this before they joined the class, but nevertheless we said that amongst the scholars who are already studying at SOIL and the ones who have been receiving some form of scholarship, we should identify one of the students from the Human Resources Leadership batch, because Mahesh was really a guru in the area of human resources. And so you could emulate his vision. And we could choose one student for not only the qualities of doing well in studies or doing all that, but really for that student's helpful nature. And we asked ourselves which student, even though the person has got placed himself, is assisting everyone else. So this was the collective subjective judgment of the faculty members. So I'm very pleased to announce that Balaji has been chosen as the V.S. Mahesh. Balaji, you have done well in your studies. You have you embody the 5 pillars. But the most important thing that really made your faculty members, Arunam and Snehal, choose you, and I spontaneously agreed, was that even though you have got yourself a job, you are seen as helping all your classmates. I want that spirit to be emulated by all. It's not just what I get for myself, but for everyone. So thank you. Share anything.
Thank you very much. I didn't expect this. I was expecting some other names, but I was really shocked listening to this. Coming to the V.S. Mahesh, I still remember the first session. He asked a question: does product can be copied or service can be copied? So I was the only student to answer that product can be copied. So he waited for the rest of the answers and he said, my dear gentlemen, product can be copied, but service cannot be copied. This was the first interaction with V.S. Mahesh sir. I still remember that interaction during the last session I attended. It was exactly after the day I got placed in Infosys. There was a class going on manpower planning and the training, how the automotives used to send people for training who are working in service centers. So it was a lot of question and answer session between myself, Vijay Kumar and Shivraj. We were asking a lot of questions regarding how this model actually works. And I still remember all the sessions taken by V.S. Mahesh and always share with Vijay Kumar about the particular thing. And I'm reading the Threshold of Motivation book. It's really, still yesterday I was having this book with me. The librarian asked me to return this book. It's completely overwhelmed. Thank you very much, sir.
With this, we thank you all for coming here, and thank you for making this session very special. And I'm sure Mahesh is smiling wherever he is at this whole, for us to create this opportunity for us to celebrate his life and his work. And I so much thank him and all the members of your family who have come all the way from Chennai here. I want to thank you for your presence and for your love, and we hope to see more of you in our different work that we do in different parts. So, thank you very much. Thank you.